Hey guys, Prowl1701 here with a Patreon request from one of my patrons, Androzani Major, and he wanted to know what are 5 historical settings or events that I would like to see on Doctor Who, or that I think are missed opportunities on Doctor Who. So I'm going to talk about 5, and I'm going to talk about one bonus one real quick, because it's not in the Doctor Who lore. It's not so much a historical event, but it has come up before, and that is, I would love to see the Doctor meeting King Arthur and Guinevere and the Knights of the Round Table. Now, this would of course tie in with the classic Doctor Who episode Battlefield from season 26, where the Doctor is of course alluded to be Merlin. But this version of the Doctor is younger than the version that the Knights interact with, so all of that was still in the Doctor's future. I'd like to see the other side of that. I would like to see the Doctor stumble into this other dimension and become Merlin, and have several episodes where he's acting as Merlin for King Arthur. And we could of course see that, the battle between Arthur and his sister and all of that, and the other villains he fights. You can even make that a mini-series, like a little 8-episode mini-series spin-off, you know, Doctor Who Excalibur, Doctor Who Merlin, Doctor Who and the Knights of the Round Table, whatever. I would love 8 episodes of the Doctor being Merlin, and in the final episode, you know, events play out like the way we know they do in Battlefield, of course, and the Doctor basically setting everything up for the events of Battlefield, leaving the note, leaving the thing that opens by his voice code, and you're setting up events to play out like he knows they have to in Battlefield. It would be great setting that up. So that's kind of an extra, since it's not a real historical event, or in the lore of the show, a historical event, like say meeting Robin Hood, because it's already established that King Arthur and the Knights are, you know, kind of aliens from another dimension. Number 5 on the list is the American Civil War. Naturally, being a British show, it probably isn't going to touch on that. Understandably, British show, it'd probably touch on the British Civil War, which I know nothing about. But it would be interesting to see the Doctor end up in America during the American Civil War. Could be a tricky episode, especially because you're having to delve into the racial issues at the time, of course, and the show might not want to deal with that, or more than likely it would deal with that in a manner... It would deal with that in a manner that at the end of the day would just be eye-rolling, I suspect. I don't think it would grapple with it well. I definitely don't think it would be... looking back at it, while I think it's a fascinating idea, I don't think it would end up being a good episode. But it's an interesting idea. I don't think I'd actually want to see that, thinking about it. Just because I don't think, especially the current people running the show, would have the nuance to write it well. Next on the list is Magna Carta. Now, we kind of touched on this with the King's Demons in a way, with the Master's plan, of course, trying to interrupt the signing of Magna Carta. But since it's not with the actual king, and it's off in this other area with Chameleon disguised as the king, that while the events of King's Demons are happening here, over here where the actual king is getting ready to sign, you could actually have the Doctor having to stop something going on there, with people trying to thwart the signing there, someone else interfering, and the Doctor having to stop it. I actually really like that idea. And you would have to dress the king up to kind of look like the king from King's Demon, since he's supposed to be impersonating him. I really think you need to do that. I don't think they would do that, because I don't think the people making the show now have ever seen the King's Demons or even know what it is. But they need someone on staff there to go, even if it's Ian Levine, just to go, no, 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 no. You need to listen. The king needs to look like this. Even if they have to get Ian to do it. Give someone there to make sure they're doing it right. Next on the list is the Napoleonic Wars. Having there when Napoleon was firmly emperor, when he was expanding, when he was fighting his battles, even toward the end of his reign at Waterloo, have the Doctor Who running back and forth in a very, basically a pure historical, where he's not fighting an alien menace, much like the Reign of Terror which also had Napoleon in it, but before his rise to power, really. The Doctor just ends up there with neither side trusting him, the French side or the British side, and him and his companions just having to get out of there and let history play out. I would enjoy seeing that. What do we got? Oh, medieval times in general. I talked about King Arthur, but I would love to see like medieval times, and I do mean like the fictional movie version, like what we think of as King Arthur times, the knights in the armor. And I get that real history isn't like that, but you know what? Like when you think of the movie Excalibur, everybody running around the armor, those kind of medieval times. I'd love to see an episode like that with the knights in armor and honor and all of that stuff. I would enjoy seeing an episode in those kind of medieval times. That would be really neat. And then number one on the list for me isn't so much an event as just a time. I would love to see Doctor Who just in the 80s. Just an episode that takes place in like 1988, 1989, 1984. An episode that's just thoroughly 80s. Set it in America if you can. And just like full-blown 80s. Like the Doctor and whoever his companion is meet a one-off companion for that episode. And she is just 80s. Like 80s. You take one look at her and go, 80s. I don't mean necessarily like a parody. Maybe a slight exaggeration, but very much 80s. You know, some 80s music in the background, 80s lingo, 80s slang. I like the idea of a historical, because I think a lot of us, when we think of historical, it's got to be so far in the past. It's got to be a certain distance in the past. And I think for each person, that's a different thing. Because I think a lot of us in our heads, we still think of 30 years ago as like the 60s or the 70s, like the 70s, when 30 years ago was 1995. Yeah, Star Trek Voyager is 30 years old. Babylon 5 was on like its second season. Yeah, that's crazy to me. So how old does something have to be for it to be a historical? I mean, one of the episodes of season 2, part of it takes place in 2007, only the beginning of it, which is the same amount of time between when Father's Day came out and when it took place in 1987. It boggles the mind. But I mean, is something that was made back in World War II historical? I think we'd argue yes, World War II, 40s. What about something during the 60s, like The Impossible Astronaut, Day of the Moon? Would that be considered a historical, especially when it came out? So what about something what about something set in like 1997? Which is all 28 years ago. Would that be historical? So I like the idea of keeping in mind the 80s were like 40 years ago. You know, 35, 40 years ago. 1985 was 40 years ago. Back to the Future is 40 years old. Thundercats is 40 years old. Robotech is 40 years old. Bear with me for a minute. That's hitting hard. I have living memory of 1985, so that's humbling. So yeah, I would love to see something set in the 80s, because I think the 80s are long enough ago to where that could be considered a historical setting. And I get a lot of people mentally won't be there yet for that. They won't be like, no, the 80s were just... And then they pause and they're like, oh, yeah. I'll be like, well, what about the 40s? Yeah. What about the 50s? Yeah. What about the 60s? Yeah. What about the 70s? Maybe. What about the 80s? I just want that. Something in the 80s that's not like some planet-threatening thing. Just some little small-time, lower-scale thing. Maybe not even an alien invasion. Just a corrupt businessman trying to do something. I mean, it's the 80s. You could have if you're in America, it'd be somebody crooked on Wall Street. Granted, that would probably be everybody. That's not much different than now, is it? But, it's kind of stereotypical for the 80s. So, just thwarting a human problem, a businessman who got too greedy or something low scale like that. Almost a filler episode. I would enjoy that. I love the 80s, so I would enjoy that. So that's kind of some historical settings or events that that I would like to see. I want to know what you would like to see. I'm sure there are several of them that I can't think of because I'm not British and I don't know my British history as well as I'm sure those of you who are British do. But what are 5 historical events or settings you would like to see the Doctor visit or revisit? Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button as well. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. There's a link to that down there as well. I want to give a shout out to Androzani Major. I appreciated him recommending this video. This was a fun one. I also want to give a shout out to some of my other top tier patrons, Colin Coney, Perkins, and Unknown289. I appreciate them as well. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review, the Amazon wish list. All that other fun stuff is down in the description below. Most importantly, thank you for watching.